On today's episode of The Franchise, Tuesday, January 31st, we got the Brock Purdy injury update. He's going to be out a very extended period of time. What does it mean for the 49ers and their quarterback search this offseason? Top 10 right fielders in Major League Baseball, and Sean Payton becoming the Denver Broncos' new head coach. The Franchise, as always, available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Link to the website, thefranchisepodcast.net, for articles is in the description of every single episode. We're going to start things off with Sean Payton becoming the new head coach of the Denver Broncos. First off, Sean Payton was the head coach for the Saints back during the 2021 season and since 2006. From 2006 to 2021, retired after that season. Still under contract with the Saints, so whatever team this offseason wanted to go out and get Sean Payton would have to make a trade with the Saints. And the Broncos are the team that ultimately gets Sean Payton to be the head coach of their team. So what do the Broncos give up compensation-wise to get Payton? Well, they're trading a 2023 first-round pick, which is the 29th pick in the draft, as well as a second-round pick to the Saints for Sean Payton and a third-round pick. Sean Payton's resume. Since 2006, when he was the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, he won the Super Bowl in 2009. Each year, 10-6, 7-9, 8-8, 13-3, 11-5, 13-3, 11-5, 7-9, 7-9, 7-9, 11-5, 13-3, 13-3, 12-4. And 9-8. So he's a very, very great head coach. I mean, he has multiple winning seasons, a Super Bowl title, and he's one of the best offensive coaches in the NFL. You look at some numbers here. 9 times the New Orleans Saints were a top 5 offense under Sean Payton. 12 times they were a top 10 offense. So how is Sean Payton being hired by the Broncos going to help this team? Or what is it going to do to the Broncos? Where were the Broncos at last season? Last year, first year with Russell Wilson at quarterback, their big quarterback addition, the guy that they paid $250 million to and traded multiple first-round picks and second-round picks to get. Last year they went 5-12 last season with Russell Wilson, but they also had Nathaniel Hackett as their head coach, and he got fired towards the end of the season. But even after he got fired, the Broncos were still a very bad football team. You look, 16 points per game offensively. They allowed 21. Their defense was great, 7th in yards allowed per game. But offensively, they were horrible, 21st in yards per game. They could not score the football at all. And for Russell Wilson, he wasn't good either. It wasn't just Nathaniel Hackett and the whole offensive system last year for the Broncos. It was Russell Wilson too. 3,524 yards, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 60 completion percentage with a 36.9 QBR. So the Broncos last year with Wilson and with their former head coach Nathaniel Hackett were not a good football team on the offensive side of the ball. They didn't have a running game. Russell Wilson was just not able to, one, protect the football, and two, make plays not only down the field but in the short game as well. He was not a productive player at all for the Broncos last season, and showed very few flashes of life in that Broncos offense. So getting Sean Payton, I think you can expect improvement from this offense. Wilson, there's still potential for him to be what he was a few seasons ago, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I think you look a few years ago, last year, or not the last season, his last year in Seattle, the year before that, and then 2-3 years before that, Russell Wilson was a top 10, maybe even top 5 quarterback at one point in his career. I think now you're looking at him being in the guy between the 15 to 20, 25 range in the NFL. So Sean Payton coming in, great offensive mind. We'll see what other changes he makes to the coaching staff, what offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, who's calling plays. Is it Sean Payton? Is it the offensive coordinator that they bring in? And they have weapons on that offense. Their offensive line was ranked 13th in the NFL, so they have a pretty solid offensive line. Their wide receiver room has Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, They need to obviously improve the running game. Um, and they have a really nice foundation to be a solid football team next year offensively. And defensively, they were great. Pat Surtain, they obviously traded away Bradley Chubb, but their defense was still great even after they traded Chubb. But how is this team going to improve? Because just because you got Sean Payton, you still have the same roster as last year, and that roster won you 5 games. So I don't think Sean Payton's the only move you can make. Well, they have $3 million in cap space coming into this offseason. So first of all, they don't have a whole lot to work with. They have 5 picks in the entire 2023 draft, 2 in the third round, and 3 picks in rounds 4 through 7. So they don't have a pick for the first 2 rounds of the draft. They also don't have their first round pick next year or their second round pick next year. So Denver does not have the assets to improve their roster via the draft. So they're going to have to go out there and do it in free agency or on the trade market. Free agency, there's not a lot of wide receiver options. There's a lot of quarterback options. But Russell Wilson's cap hit is among the highest in the NFL, and his guaranteed money is keeping him in Denver. So you can't move on from Wilson. I mean, lucky for the Broncos, they do not have a lot of free agents this offseason. At least a lot of notable guys. They have a lot of offensive linemen that are free agents, but they should be able to bring those guys back this offseason. So the Sean Payton hire is a great move. He's the best head coach available on the market, right, for any of the teams. I think it was either he goes to Denver or Arizona, or he waits another season to get a head coaching job. Personally, if I was him, I would have taken the Arizona Cardinals job. Kyler Murray, I think, is a better quarterback than Russell Wilson, and he's going to be better the next 5 years. Kyler Murray is a much younger player. The Cardinals, I think, have a better roster. They have more assets than Denver. But Sean Payton is going to be the head coach of the Broncos. 5-12 record for the Broncos last season. We'll see what happens, what moves they make in the offseason to improve that football team next year. Another head coaching hire, DeMeco Ryan, former defensive coordinator from the Niners, heading over to the Texans, taking over their head coach job for 6 seasons. The Texans have a lot of things they need to improve. I mean, first of all, they have the second pick in the draft, so they need to find their quarterback. Is it going to be Bryce Young? Is it going to be C.J. Stroud? Are you going to trade up? Are you going to trade down? What are the Texans going to do at quarterback? I know they have Davis Mills. He's a very viable option right now. For me, what I would do if I was the head coach of the Texans is I would not draft a quarterback in this draft. All right, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud for me are the 1 and 2 in this draft. And I'm still going through. I'm actually really going through all of these prospects. And then once we get closer to the draft in April, I'm going to come out with, a mock draft and really be able to give insight on all these players. But Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are clearly the 1-2 in the draft. But if I'm the Texans, I think you got to look at next year's quarterback class and the potential to get Caleb Williams from USC as your quarterback. So I think if you're the Texans, you could draft a guy on defense, a Will Anderson, Jalen Carter. You could trade down and draft a wide receiver or some offensive linemen. So then next year, if you tank and have the number 1 overall pick, you can go out there and you can get Caleb Williams. And then you have a really, really good team going forward next year. But I think they'll go out and end up drafting quarterback. But the Texans are many years away from competing in the AFC South. I mean, their team on both sides of the ball is nowhere near a playoff contending team, but DeMeco Ryan's a great head coaching hire for the Texans. Brock Purdy yesterday. In yesterday's episode, I was talking about the recap of the championship game. He got injured. It was an elbow injury. Well, it comes out yesterday. He tore his UCL and will be requiring surgery. So he's going to be out for 6 months. UCL, obviously a very common injury in baseball. You don't see it a lot in the NFL because, you're using different parts of your arm when you're throwing a football compared to a baseball. But Purdy's going to be out 6 months. So this begs the question, what does it mean for the 49ers quarterback search? I said yesterday, you can cross Jimmy Garoppolo off the list of returning quarterbacks to the Niners next season. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is gone. He will not be returning to the Niners. So I said yesterday it's going to be Purdy and Trey Lance for that job. But Purdy's going to miss the entire offseason, basically. I mean, you look at 6 months from now, he might be ready for the start of training camp, and then maybe the regular season. But that's best case scenario, right? For Brock Purdy. Trey Lance is still coming back from an injury. So I think the Purdy injury and Jimmy Garoppolo definitely on the way out from the 49ers. I do think it legitimately opens the door for Tom Brady to become a 49er. I said yesterday, there's no way that happens. But this injury just changed everything. I think this injury right here to Purdy, I mean, this could be a career-altering injury for Brock Purdy. You know, he could never be the same player again. He can never, maybe his moments in the NFL were that 7-game stretch where he went 7-0, led them to the NFC Championship, and then his career's over. Right, but he can still bounce back. But I think this injury opens the door for Tom Brady to join the San Francisco 49ers. You're looking at Brady playing 1, maybe 2 more seasons max in the NFL. You're looking at him obviously he wants to go to a team that's going to win a Super Bowl. He's leaving Tampa Bay. I think that's very obvious and easy to say. He is leaving Tampa. I said the Raiders a few weeks ago. I think the Raiders are an option with all of their weapons. The Dolphins are being mentioned. I think that's a possibility, right? With Tua's injury history of concussions and the weapons that they have with Mike McDaniel. And even last offseason, Tom Brady was supposed to go to Tampa or to Miami, and then a bunch of tampering charges, so he goes back to Tampa Bay. So I think you're looking at the Raiders and the Dolphins, and now I think you can seriously take a look at the San Francisco 49ers and say they are a team that could potentially land Tom Brady this offseason if he does decide to continue to play in the NFL. Right, their offensive line is a pretty good group with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Ayuk. All of the weapons are there. With Kyle Shanahan as that head coach, Tom Brady will be in arguably one of the best offensive systems of his entire career if he was to join the Niners for next season. But I guess we still have to wait and see what Tom Brady is going to do. I still think he's going to come back for another season. And now I think you can put the Niners on this list with the Brock Purdy injury and the questions around him and Trey Lance coming into next season. All right, real quick before we get into the top 10 right fielders, Jazz Chisholm is going to be the cover athlete for MLB The Show, the Miami Marlins second baseman / outfielder. Jazz Chisholm is a great player. He's an amazing player. He's an exciting player for baseball. It was an all-star last year during the first half, but he only played 60 games last season. I think the cover athlete should have been Julio Rodriguez, right? Julio, AL Rookie of the Year, all-star, one of the most exciting young players in the game of baseball. Very marketable player for the game. And Jazz Chisholm is too. I just think you have to... I mean, how much does this really impact, LeBron's legacy or any... How does it impact anything? It doesn't at all. All right, the cover athlete really doesn't matter. But I just don't see how you can give the cover athlete to a guy who played 60 games last season. As good as Jazz Chisholm is when he's on the field, I just don't think he was on the field enough to earn the cover athlete yet. But really, this doesn't mean anything. This doesn't matter at all. So, Jazz Chisholm, MLB The Show cover athlete. All right, let's get to the top 10 right fielders. We're almost done with these positional groups. We have DH, and then starting pitchers, relief pitchers. Thinking of dividing up the starting pitchers into lefties and righties because narrowing the amount of starting pitchers to just 10 is pretty hard to do. That'd be that list would have a lot of snubs on it, to say the least. But here we are with the top 10 right fielders. Beginning at number 10, I think that this guy has probably one of the coolest names in baseball. I didn't really know he was a player until I was researching for this. That's going to be Lars Nootbaar from the St. Louis Cardinals. Last season, 347 plate appearances, 14 home runs, 228 average, 340 on base, 448 slugging with a 788 OPS. It is small sample size. He played some pretty solid defense out there for the Cardinals in right field. One of the better arms in Major League Baseball. And looking at some other stats here, he doesn't strike out a lot. He doesn't chase at a lot of pitches, and he walks at a very extremely high rate. He's only 25 years old. For a Cardinals team, they have a lot of guys on that team, on that Cardinals team. They had Tyler O'Neill. You have Dylan Carlson. You have Lars Nootbaar out there in the outfield. I think he's going to be a very big piece for this Cardinals team. 25 years old. I could see him being their starting right fielder, or at least platooning next season. But based off of the year that he had in 2022, and even before in his smaller sample size in 2021, I think Lars Nootbaar, I'm not even gonna lie, I didn't know this guy really existed. So, but just looking at his numbers and his advanced numbers, his defense is really, really solid, and he's able to hit. I think if he plays a full season, just based off of what his stats look like, he could be a 20 homer guy, hitting in the low 220s, 230s, but playing some really nice defense out there in right field. Number 9, Teoscar Hernandez of the Seattle Mariners, formerly of the Blue Jays, traded this offseason to Seattle. This guy's a great hitter. 25 homers, 267 average, 316 on base, 491 slugging with an 807 OPS. He's been a great hitter throughout most of his career. Very elite numbers in terms of hard hit, slugging, barrel percentage. I've been able to hit near 25, 30 home runs a season, getting on base and slugging at a nice clip. Nice arm strength defensively is not something to mention for Teoscar Hernandez. He's not a great defensive player. He does strike out and walk at a very high clip, but his power numbers are what bring him up here. He's an all-star in his past, so that brings him up here to number 9. Number 8, I have Hunter Renfroe from the Angels last season with the Milwaukee Brewers. 29 home runs, 255 average, 492 slugging with an 807 OPS. This guy is a consistent 25 to 30 home run hitter a season. He's not going to play amazing defense out there in right field, but he does have a very strong arm. He does have a cannon for an arm, so regardless of his mobility out there in right field, if a ball's hit to his right or off the wall, he's going to have the potential to, gun a guy out at second, third, or even home plate out there in the field. Does strike out a lot, walks at a, league average clip, but his offensive power numbers are incredible, and he's been a consistent, 25 to 30 home run guy for the past few seasons out there with the Red Sox and the Brewers and back with the Tampa Bay Rays, and now right fielder for the Angels. Number 7, Starling Marte from the Mets. This guy is 34 years old and is stealing 18 bags a year. 16 homers, 292 average, 815 OPS. Marte's been a guy throughout his career that's going to steal you, near 20 bases, hit possibly 20 home runs, and hit 290 to 300 every single season. Last year, first year with the New York Mets out there in right field, and he didn't disappoint. He played very solid baseball out there for the Mets. Coming up this season, entering his age 34 season, I think you could still expect him to steal 15 bags. His speed, has gone down, but on the bases, he's a threat. Defensively in the outfield, decent arm, not the best mobility out there in the outfield, but he's a serviceable right fielder, and his speed and his threat on the base pass, and as a threat to hit 300 and drive in 60 runs a season, he's an important piece to the Mets, whether he's sitting at the top, middle, or the bottom of the lineup. He comes in at, number 7 on the top 10 right fielders. Number 6 is George Springer. He did play center field last year. Going to play right field this year, so I'll put him in this right field ranking for this episode. 25 home runs, 267 average, 14 stolen bases with an 814 OPS last season with the Toronto Blue Jays. World Series, I think he was the World Series MVP with the Astros back when they won in 2017. His first few years with Toronto, he's been pretty solid. 33 years old, he's still hitting the ball as hard as anybody else, not striking out a lot, not walking at a very high clip, and he plays solid defense last year in center field. As he's getting older and starting to slow down, with the injury history that he does have, I think him moving to right field is going to help out the longevity of his career. I think it'd be better for him to play left field based off of his arm strength, but all indications seem that he will be playing right field for the Blue Jays next season. All right, entering entering the top 5. We have Kyle Tucker from the Houston Astros. Now, a lot of people might say, oh, you snubbed him. He should be number 4. He should be number 3. I have him top 5. I think Kyle Tucker is one of the best hitters, best left-handed hitting outfielders in Major League Baseball. 30 home runs, 107 RBIs, 808 OPS, 478 slugging with a 257 batting average. Out there in right field for the world champion Astros. Plays elite right field defense. And offensively, he's one of the best hitters, left-handed hitters in Major League Baseball. He does not strike out. He walks. He hits 30-plus home runs a season, driving in 100-plus RBIs, and has some of the best raw power in Major League Baseball. So his combination of power and defense brings him up here to number 5. Number 4, I have Ronald Acuna Jr. from the Braves. Last year, kind of a disappointing season, right? You look the year before, he did tear his ACL. So coming out this year in a smaller sample size, 15 home runs, 266 average, 764 OPS. A down year offensively for Acuna. He's coming back from the ACL. He didn't have a large sample size at the plate and on the field this season. Only 533 plate appearances. I'm pretty sure he was an all-star, surprisingly, despite missing a lot of the first half of the season. But he's one of the best young players in the game. He's only 25 years old. You look at before he tore his ACL, he was an MVP candidate back in 2019, 2020, and 2021. He was an MVP candidate, multiple-time all-star. Last year, obviously, disappointing season. But I think next year he's going to bounce back. This 2023 season is going to be an elite season for Ronald Acuna. Elite arm strength, 100th percentile in arm strength. Defense, last season was down. I think he has the potential to be a better defensive outfielder than the stats indicate. He can steal 30 bases. He's part of that club, the 2020 club. He could join the 30-30 club next season. 30 homers, 30 stolen bases. Hitting the ball as hard as anybody else. And on the field, at the plate, he's one of the most exciting players to watch in Major League Baseball. He is at number 4. I think he has the potential to win the MVP next season in the National League. Number 3 is Juan Soto from the Padres. Juan Soto is only 24 years old, and he's played in 5 Major League seasons. And he's won a World Series, been a multiple-time All-Star, and has been already labeled arguably the best hitter in the entire sport. Traded from the Nationals to the Padres last season, 27 home runs, 242 average, 452 slugging, 853 OPS. His defense, it's not anything to mention. He's one of the worst defensive outfielders in the game. But he is an elite hitter. He's arguably a top 5 hitter in all of baseball, regardless of position. He does not strike out. He does not swing and miss. He walks at an extremely high clip. 100th percentile in walk rate, 100th percentile in chase rate, 90th percentile in K rate. Doesn't strike out. Walks a lot. Doesn't swing and miss. He's a very, very disciplined hitter at the plate who can hit 30 home runs, hit for a near 300 batting average every single season. I know he hit 242 last year, but you look at years past, he's hitting near 300. Has the potential to be a batting champ, and is going to be one of the most impactful players on the Padres this season. And he's arguably a top 10 player in the game of baseball. He is at number 3. Number 2 is Mookie Betts. I wanted to put Mookie Betts over Aaron Judge because, Mookie he's been more consistent longer than Aaron Judge. Judge has, had a lot of injury history in his past. I know he won the MVP, and we'll talk about Judge in a second, right? But Mookie Betts, he's going to come in at number 2, plays elite right field defense, whether it's outs above average, his jump, arm strength, defensive runs saved. Mookie Betts is in the top of all of those statistics. And at the plate, last season, 35 home runs, 269 average, with a 873 OPS, 533 slugging, He's won an MVP. He's actually, has Mookie Betts won an MVP? I'm pretty sure he has, but I'm gonna double check. Has Mookie Betts won an MVP? I'm trying to think back. Yeah, he's won an MVP. What year did he win that MVP? 2018 MVP with the Red Sox. How did I forget that? Mookie Betts is an MVP winner with the Dodgers. 35 home runs last season, like I said. His combination of power, contact average, speed, and elite defense, he's at number 2. Could have put him at number 1. There's no argument for if you do put him at number 1. I think it could go either way. But I have Aaron Judge being number 1. American League MVP last season, holds the American League record for single-season home runs with 62. I mean, last year he had the most elite season offensively in the history of the sport. 62 home runs, 131 RBI, 311 average, 425 on base, 686 slugging with a 1.111 OPS. As elite numbers, he led Major League Baseball in basically all of these offensive statistics I just mentioned. He plays Gold Glove defense in right field. I know he played a good amount of games in center field. I think he's still a right fielder. 93rd in arm strength. I'm going to read off these numbers. 100th percentile average exit velocity. 100th percentile ex-WOBA. 100th percentile in barrel percentage, hard hit, slugging, ex-slugging. 99th percentile in the following: max exit velo, ex-batting average, and walk percentage. Aaron Judge is an elite hitter for the New York Yankees. Won the MVP last season. I think he has the potential to win a few more of those. 220 career home runs. Could he get to 500? Maybe. He's an elite hitter and the best right fielder in Major League Baseball heading into the 2023 season. So that's the top 10 right fielders. We'll be back tomorrow. I think we're going to do the designated hitters. We'll talk some NBA tomorrow and whatever else happens over the next few hours, because stuff just randomly happens. I wasn't expecting to do a podcast today until Sean Payton got hired, because there just wasn't enough to talk about. But Sean Payton got hired, so that is enough to warrant a podcast. But we will be back tomorrow, top 10 DH. We're going to talk some NBA. Tomorrow we'll give out NBA contenders or pretenders. Which team do I think are actually contending for a championship, and which teams are just going to be playoff exits. And yeah, top 10 DHs and all of that coming up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next episode.